You're tuned in to the Trial Technology and Litigation Support Podcast. Sit back and enjoy interviews with industry leaders as we discuss everything from new trends to old war stories. Interested in being a guest on the podcast? Contact us on Twitter at TrialTechCast.
Welcome into another week of the Litigation Support Trial Technology Podcast. Rob Helt here with you. And I have received a couple of emails that asked me, where is Josh and did he quit the show or leave the show? Short answer is no. Josh has a lot going on. And with the times that we record and the times we do shows, it's sometimes difficult for him, but he is still behind the scenes, still working on stuff for me up in Boston. And so he's still attuned with the show. He's still involved. And before long, he's going to have some things break loose where he can come on and definitely co-host. And so we've not lost Josh. I will say that there are a lot of things shaking up in the industry right now, a lot of things happening, a lot of things going on. And so I'm going to talk about a little of that, do a quick little intro for this podcast. And my guest today, I am very excited. If you heard the show last week, we talked with Michael Caldwell. And as everybody knows, on these shows, there are certain names that get mentioned in the industry. And one name that has come up 2 or 3 times in 2 or 3 different podcasts has been Kim Taylor. And we've talked about iPro and some of their solutions and things like that, is throwing them out there. If you remember the TIFF to PDF, which was better show, we talked about some iPro solutions. And so we're going to have Kim on the show today after about a month and a half of back and forth and talking, and hey, I'd like to have you on. Well, hey, I want to be on. We finally got our schedules coordinated, and we were able to get that done today. And so I'm really excited about that. I want to thank everybody for hitting the download button on iTunes or wherever it is that you get your podcast from. We are direct up on a website. You can get your links off of LinkedIn. And iTunes is probably the main place that everybody seems to get their podcast from. And I want to thank everybody for hitting the download button. I know that you certainly don't have to, and you certainly do not have to listen. But I'm very happy with the listens that we've had so far. Who would have thought just a small litigation support podcast dealing with lit support and trial technology would get as many listens as we do. I'm humbled by it, and I thank you very much for doing so. Also, hit us up on Twitter at TrialTechCast. We have tripled in followers, mostly law firms, paralegals, and some trial tech people, and I certainly appreciate that. At TrialTechCast is how you can find us on Twitter. I made a post on LinkedIn about a week ago. I've got a law firm that is using me to find all of their videographers for a fairly large case that we have. We have 2 cases. We have one that is the entire month of August, and then one that is the month of January and February of 2016. And we have about 80 depositions so far done in the case in August, and they've been done by people all around the country as well as myself and Ross Jones. And the stuff that is coming across the desk is absolutely horrid. It's hard to sync, it's jittery, it's pixelated, it's whatever the case may be. And I began to complain a little bit because that gets all over me. And the lawyer finally sent an email out to all of his paralegals and said, look, from now on, all depositions, all cases, y'all feel free to schedule the court reporter, but I want Rob Helt scheduling the videographers. He's going to find somebody that can do it. So I made a post on LinkedIn and said, hey, if you have the capability of going to MPEG 4, you have the capability of online delivery, and you have the capability of doing Skype, because we use Skype for business. And so Skype for business is a little different than your average everyday Skype. You can download Skype for free. Skype for business, which I have, is what I pay for along with Eviar. And the connection is better, and the things work out better, and it's a higher quality of video, and the audio streaming is relatively good. And so I made a post that I needed videographers around the country. If you wanted to help me out, if you wanted to get on my database, if you could do the following 3 things, send me your name, contact information, I'll reach out to you. And I don't know if people can't follow directions, if people can't read, or people just get in a hurry and all they see is name added to database. Because I have gotten everything from people's life stories to people telling me how they shoot in super high definition and their stuff is 1920 and it's HD and I'm like, I didn't want to know all that. Didn't care. Just give me your name. Do you shoot 10-peg-4? Do you deliver online? And do you Skype? That's all I need to know. Everything else is relative. So the only advice I have on the front of this podcast for videographers and for most people is quit trying to be all things to all people and trying to be cute. Just stick with what you know, do what you know, and do it well, and stick to the status quo. When somebody asks you the time, don't tell them how to build a watch. That's just my rant for the day. Speaking of doing all things for all people and trying to be everything at once, my guest does not do that. I'm going to talk today with Kim Taylor. And for those of you who have been in the industry for any amount of time, if I say that name, you know who I'm talking about. When Kim was with Lex Saludio, we're going to talk about today, they worked on Enron. And they almost bankrupted their company by having a very large case in the books. So we're going to hire you to work on this trial. You are coming in. You are going to be our company. And that was Lex Saludio. They dropped $3 million on infrastructure right off the bat out of their pocket. And I don't know a lot of companies out there that are in our industry that have the nuggets to drop $3 million on a case right off the bat that you're not getting paid. You're not going to get paid until this thing's over or whatever you have worked out. You're putting $3 million off the top. That was Kim Taylor. I've always said he's forgotten more about documents than I'll ever know. And honestly, more than most people when it comes to document management and how they do it. And over the course of his career, and we're going to talk a little bit about this and I'm going to let him speak to it. But finally, in 2013, in January of 13, things kind of settled down for Kim in Phoenix when he became the president and chief operating officer for iProtech there in Phoenix. And I want to read to you something that Jim King, the CEO of iPro, said. And I quote, "Only a handful of individuals can fully comprehend the intricate workflow involved in managing complex litigation and the technology needed to support this process." I don't know that any truer words have been spoken. Only a handful of individuals can fully comprehend the intricate workflow involved in managing complex litigation. And what I take away from that is a handful is 5. There's 1,000 trial techs out here. Guys, if you don't know how to do it, don't try to fake it till you make it because you'll get destroyed in this business by doing that. I got my taste of it down south. It was daunting and there was a lot to it. But this is a big data-driven world now. And I know of no one who is better at dealing with and managing big data than my guest today, coming in from Phoenix, Arizona, Kim Taylor. Kim, welcome to the podcast and thanks for being on.
Well, Rob, thanks for having me. It's an honor. I've listened to a few of them, and you're very entertaining, and the insight you give is perfect for what the industry needs.
Well, you know, and Kim, I appreciate it, and I'm certainly, it's an honor and a privilege to talk to you. It's an honor and a privilege to be able to do the podcast, and you know, it was my way of giving back. And I think the one thing that people really do not realize is that we don't prep for these shows. It's simply, hey, Kim, you want to come on? Yeah, sure. Hey, what do you want to talk about? Well, I got a couple things I want to talk about, but we'll talk about it live on the podcast because I think that organically things come out of these conversations. And honestly, I'm just a sponge. I just, I ask questions that I want to know the answers to, and maybe somebody else does. And if it makes for good entertainment value, great. If it makes for knowledge in the industry, great. If it helps some businesses get some sales, great. But honestly, it's just kind of my way of giving back, and I learn more about people. And you're certainly, you've got 25 years in this industry. I said in the open that, you've forgotten more about documents than most people ever know. Let's start with iPro, and we're going to work our way backwards. You guys are working on so many different things right now, from your in-house review software to your end-to-end litigation management stuff, some of the solutions that you guys have going on out there. Talk a little bit about iPro as a whole, because when you came on, you were the guy that's responsible, or you are the guy that's responsible for overall strategic growth and direction of iPro. And iPro is a major player in the game. What do you guys have going on right now? Because I'm sorry that I keep rambling, but I mean, you guys are doing everything from Allegro to Eclipse to eScan it, eCapture. You're involved in cloud, you're involved in e-discovery, early case assessment, scanning, litigation tools. I mean, where does it end?
My grave, I think. But no, it's really been just the funnest ride I think anyone could ever have. 3 years ago, Jim and I talked about me coming to iPro, and we just sold Encore, and I was looking for something to do. And I was a customer when I was at Encore. I was a customer of iPro, and I just really loved the company. I had a 25-year history with Jim King. Loved the guy. He just really, I think, has been a inspirational person in the industry, and so to get to work with him would be an honor. And so I came to iPro, and really I looked at iPro as having the most technology under one roof, and probably had more data going through their software than any other e-discovery software out there. But one of the things I didn't like probably as much was the service and how the software really looked at workflow. And I think that's the biggest thing that we've changed at iPro over the last 3 years is we really strive that we're a service company. We just happen to sell software. And secondly, I think we have the best workflow solution in the industry. And that's really kind of where we're changing iPro drastically. And that is, you mentioned 25 years. It's actually 23 years, so you're getting me too old already. But the 23 years I've been doing this, the 4 things that I can say that I've learned that are the business problems for any law firm or service provider is how do you lower your dollars per gigabyte? How do you lessen the time per gigabyte? How do you prevent the fewer amount of errors per gigabyte? And probably the hardest and most important thing that you could probably attest to is human capital per gigabyte. And I know you guys focus on trials a lot, but before trials you have to do discovery. And those are the 4 major issues of my 23 years that we're trying to solve. So we've taken all that great software that iPro has had under one roof, and we really created this new workflow system called Automated Digital Discovery. And we want to make it so simple that all you have to do is just add new data, and it will get into review for you. It's being very well received. We'll be showing it at Legal Tech West next week and ILTA next month. And it's really going to revolutionize what law firms and service providers can do. So it's a very exciting time for us.
Tell me about the new offices that you're building out in Phoenix. I've heard rumor that it is Google-esque.
Well, that's what we're trying to accomplish. iPro today is in a very nice building in North Scottsdale, but it looks like an insurance company. And obviously, being a software development company, you need to really build an environment where the younger generation likes to work, and we don't really have that today at iPro. Plus, we're in North Scottsdale, which is hard to find probably the tech people that we need. So we're moving 2 miles from ASU, and ASU By the way, go Sun Devils. The ASU is the largest college in the country, so we'll be 2 miles from there, so we'll be able to attract that top talent. We'll be centrally located. But really the exciting thing is the state-of-the-art facility we're building. It will be all kind of open community type work that you see I've had the luck of going to Lincoln and Starbucks and some of these other companies and looking at how they've set their companies up. And it will be this collaborative environment, very open, a lot of hidden areas where you can go and sit on a couch. Most of our conference rooms will be that way as well. And we're going to have a 2,000 square foot mezzanine play area with ping pong tables and pool tables and even a bar, and so it's going to, one, allow us to attract top talent, and two, with our training facility that we're building, it will allow us to train more and more people when they come to iPro. And that's one of the things that we implemented 2 years ago. We have regular scheduled classes, and if you come to the facility, you get training for free. We really believe that training is one of the most important things. So you can come to iPro, get free training. In September, you'll be in our brand new facility.
Now, you guys are dealing a lot with e-discovery, and I want to pick your brain a minute and ask, what do you see as the common mistake or flaw or issue that a lot of people have out here with e-discovery? What is it that people are doing wrong?
Well, I think a lot of it is it's planning, and if you look at the human capital needed, right? So to me, not all data processes equally. So you have to understand that there are certain software programs or systems that will process the data, but there's a lot of data that you have to massage, and then what do you have to do to be able to get it from from processing to calling to review. So there's all kinds of things, to me, that interconnectivity of going from one application to another, it takes human capital to do that. So understanding that the software is difficult, and that the applications don't always process the data the same way, and having those human beings to be able to go and solve those problems is probably the most difficult thing. So that human capital, you'll hear me say human capital all the time. At iPro, we're trying to take all this knowledge that we have over the years and building it into the application, so you don't have to have that knowledge per se to have a successful project.
Let me ask you a question, and I'm bouncing around a little bit, but we had a show that we had a round table that one of your former colleagues, I think Rob Rosenberg and I talked about this at one time, and we kicked it around. And then we had a show where we had Jason Barnes and Ross Jones, and we had Hunter Blackburn and somebody else on the show, and we talked about PDF versus TIFF. And because you've been around documents so long, and I'm fixing to get into Lex Salutio, but what do you think about the TIFF versus PDF thing that's going on out here today, where people are trying to argue either point counterpoint on TIFF versus PDF? Which one do you think is better? Which one do you think should be used? Coming from a guy who I consider to be the foremost expert in the industry when it comes to documents.
Well, to me, I'm old school, so I believe TIFF is by far superior. But and before I came to iPro, I would say hands down. But now I watch how fast that we can do things in PDF that makes it harder to do in TIFF. A lot of times we're saying in our solution, go process in PDF, and then when you produce out in TIFF, and we can do that just as fast. So I think there's advantages for both. If I were doing a review or doing trial, though, it's hands down TIFF, just for all of the annotations and all the other software programs being able to do things with the TIFF. It's not the end user piece of it is not even a close battle, in my opinion.
What do you think about speed?
Well, obviously, are you doing single page or multi-page? We can actually process PDFs and convert to PDFs faster than we can convert to TIFFs. But I guess the question is, are you talking for trial or are you talking?
Yeah, for trial. What do you think for speed use of end users seeing the document come up, the call up, whether the speed is a millisecond, a tenth of a second, whatever, which one's faster, TIFF or PDF?
Well, like I said earlier, I've not done trials since 2003, so I'm probably at a disadvantage there. But all the years I started doing trials in 1995, 96, so TIFF by far, especially if you're doing single page. To me, not even a race.
I got it, and I don't disagree with you. I think the tagged image file format is perfectly fine. It still works, and if it's not broke, don't fix it. You just mentioned 95, 96 area. My understanding is you were one of the first people to use Visionary in trial. Is this correct?
Oh, I was in love with that program. I even went Ryder Evans, who was the developer there. I probably spent more time with him in a 2-year period than my wife. She accused that we were out causing trouble together. But I loved Visionary in the early days. Like I said, I tried to buy the company, merge it with Lexeludio at one point in time. I did all kinds of trials with it. I thought their issue builders that they had was probably the best workflow for trials that I've ever seen. So I quit using it really when we sold Lexeludio to Encore in 2003. That's when we kind of got out of the trial business, and so at that point in time, I lost contact with Visionary. But I really loved it. At the time, unfortunately, it was unstable back then. So I listened to some of your podcasts, and Rob Rosenberg, by the way, I love him. He's been one of my favorite guys in the industry. But back in the day when we used to do trials, it truly was Russian roulette of which barcode swipe is going to kill you, which switch is not going to work. And Visionary back in those days was not as stable as some of the others. And I spent many nights, especially the trial that I did in Guam using Visionary, on the phone with them. But like I said, I haven't seen it since 2003.
Now, 2003 was when Lexeludio was acquired by Encore, and at the time of the purchase, you guys had what? Did you guys had how many employees with how many locations at that point?
Yeah, we're 5 locations, about 750 employees, and we sold in 2003, and they instantly merged us with a DC company, Atlanta company, and a Chicago company, and we had offices in those 3 cities as well. And I think the new owner's concept was we're going to take these copy companies and instantly enlighten them with technology. Lexeludio never did copying. We were always a digital company, so we always were imaging or bibliographical coding or trials or video text synchronizations, stuff like, and web hosting. And so when we merged and they threw all these copy companies in with us, it really took the wind out of our sails, I think, and it took years for Encore to recover.
Now, you were one of the co-founders of Lexeludio. Talk about that. How'd the company come about? Anybody that's been in the industry a long time remembers Lexeludio. Talk about how you got your start doing that.
Yeah, Lexeludio is a fun story. I was Knight Rider's national operations manager and was working on cases like Charlie Keating and Exxon Valdez, and they hired me to help come up with the plan of how to make Knight Rider just the best imaging company. And a year into it, they didn't like my plan, and so we agreed to part ways. And I went to go work for a little company called Envision, which was a competitor to iPro at the time, and really had one of the first trial presentation packages called Trial Lake. And so we went there for a year or so, and they went out of business. And so really Lexeludio came out of desperation. Myself and 2 longtime friends, Steve Moore and Dave Landmeyer, we were sitting around and said, now we're out of a job, now what? And we decided to put our money where our mouth were. And it's really kind of interesting. We took no investment money. We started out of our homes. And we sold during the day and processed at night, and our kids would base label and process, and we finally got a little 800 square foot office, and then it moved. Every year for 9 years we doubled. So and then in 2002 we landed the entire Enron litigation. So, but it started out of our homes. We never one time had investment money, and it was just kind of a grassroots movement for us.
Were you like everybody else that was working on Enron from the different sides? Were you court appointed as well?
Well, the judge said that they wanted one central repository and one central both for physical and electronic documents. And so 18 companies went and we answered the RFP, and we won that. So we were both the plaintiff and defense had to get together, pick one company. They picked Lex, and so then the judge placed it in order that all physical and electronic documents had to go to us. So there was a lot of companies, so don't get me wrong, there was a lot of companies that worked on Enron, that processed Enron documents, but at the end of the day, they all had to come to us. And with that being said, we also processed, a good portion of it.
Well, all of my stuff got sent to y'all. Everything that I processed and did ended up going to you guys anyway.
Yeah, it was really kind of an interesting thing for us because, one, we didn't have a Houston office, so we went and opened up a Houston office because of it. And we literally took this 2-story building and we took the second floor and we gutted it. And we put up these huge shelves and blacked out all the walls and put up all the windows and put up all the security. And all the physical documents stayed there for years. And during that time, we only had one law firm lawyer ever come to look at the physical documents, and we showed them that it was all online. And so then they in a conference room, and so then they said okay and left. So it was all basically electronic through Concordance and iConnect at the time. But what was really interesting when we sold Encore to Epic in 2011, I think we were just in the process of taking the Enron data down from the repository. So that was almost 10 years of about 200 million documents online.
Well, I knew it was a lot because when we turned everything over and everything would go up to you guys, that was right at the same time that we were all getting contracted to go do WorldCom out of Tulsa. When they were having their big debacle going on. So it was around that same time. And I knew that all roads, which is the same thing that happened to us in BP, InData ended up being the marshal or the gatekeeper of all documents and everything. There was a master database that they had. And now you had left Encore at one point, right? Or you actually, after they purchased you took some time off, and then you went to Encore as their chief operating officer, correct?
Yeah, they brought me back in late 2008, and the company was not really firing on all cylinders, and so they brought me back, and we basically probably put the band back together and got a lot of the old Lex Luthor people back, and really, I think in a 2.5 year period, we took Encore, almost doubled the sales, and made it very profitable, which we ended up selling it to Epic in April of 2011. So it was a great turnaround story.
What was your ultimate goal when you came to iPro? If somebody looked at you and said, Kim, what is your goal for iPro coming in as president and chief operating officer? What is your goal for iPro over the next 5 years?
Well, that's a great question. And one, people ask me all the time, and believe it or not, every once in a while, I'll get a job offer, and I say, look, I work with my best friends every day. So I'm very fortunate that I've had a lot of people follow me from place to place. So at iPro today, we have about 40 Encore Lex Luthor people, with 14 of them being Lex Luthor. So most of the people here today has been with me forever. So I have guys like Mike Schubert and Tammy Doss and Steve Moore and Jeff Smith and folks like that I'm very blessed that they believe in me enough to follow. So with that being said, really we're looking at trying to attack the inefficiencies of e-discovery, and that's kind of what we've watched over the last years. E-discovery today, if we were going to start off and design e-discovery, we wouldn't do it the way that the industry does it today. And e-discovery's kind of morphed from Clearwell being hot, and then it gets sold, and so all that workflow goes away, and you have different programs doing half of the work, and then you have to move the data over to this program. So there's no real easy solution. So people ask me all the time, Kim, who do you compete with? I say, look, I compete with inefficiencies of e-discovery. And really that's what we're trying to do. A year and a half ago, we came out with a thing called an I-proclamation, and that's really e-discovery should be simple, affordable, and automated. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make it simple, affordable, automated, especially with the way that the data volumes are growing. But we also, being all service bureau people, we miss soccer games. We got called out of a funeral because of a case is crashing, or missing Christmas because we're tied up into a case. So we understand the toll that this industry takes on our personal life, and we believe with us having all this technology and this expertise on workflow that we can start from scratch and build a better system to where the people can get their lives back. There's less chances of errors and the pain that goes along with that, and especially keeping costs down to where this doesn't have to be so hard. So that's kind of our mission statement is how do we make it simple, affordable, and automated.
Let's talk about iPro a minute. What's going on, man? What are you guys doing? What are some of the software packages that you have available right now that really excite you, that you're either A, you've already pushed out to market, or B, are going to be going to market?
Sure. If you look, Eclipse SE is just blowing up, and Eclipse SE is our desktop application that would be a replacement for concordance or summation, and we all know where they stand in the industry. Just recently, the DOJ selected Eclipse SE to be rolled out to their 6,000 attorneys nationwide to replace concordance. And it is just a really easy to use, powerful review application, but it's also what I really love about it. It has all these great utilities that iPro is known for, like iPro Build and Scan and the ability to produce stuff like that. So this application, not only is it a strong review application with transcript management, but it has all these great utilities that everyone should be using. You mentioned PDFs and TIFFs. A common thing that people will have is they'll send documents out and they'll get 500 page PDF that really should be 50 documents, and they didn't get unitized correctly. So within Eclipse SE, you can just a button reunitize all those documents and create records, etc. So it's pretty powerful. But really, the thing that I think we have taken the industry by storm is something that we have a patent pending on, and it's a new processing technique, and it's called our automated digital discovery, but with current streaming. And this is where I think we're going to change the industry. The whole industry processes data in batches. I got this big hard drive, I map the custodian, I'm copying up to my network. It's going to sit there, and then I got to run utilities to make sure it all copied, and then I take that big data set and I start processing it, and it's just this constant starts and stops of this big data set going everywhere. What we're doing is we believe if you look at your faucet or you look at electricity, on your faucet you turn the handle, you don't wait for the whole hot water tank to heat up before you get hot water, you start getting hot water. And that's really the way that we're designing our automated digital discovery, to where it's taking smaller chunks on a container or folder level, and will send it automatically from copying to putting into Eclipse or Relativity, all with no humans, all automated in a streaming method. And when we show customers that, their mouth drops.
Well, I'm sitting here right now. Of course, you can see me on video, so I'm listening to this intently because I'm understanding. I stayed away from e-discovery all these years, and I continue to stay away from it because it's kind of one of those things that you run a lot of risk in e-discovery, and you need to know what you're doing, and you certainly can't fake it till you make it. You've got to be able to get in there and do what you need to do. And what really interests me is the fact that there's some kind of a replacement, some kind of an alternative for summation and concordance. I think both of those programs are a little long in the tooth. And, it's kind of like with the trial presentation softwares that are out here. Just because you were the 800-pound gorilla for 10 years doesn't mean you're going to continue to be the 800-pound gorilla in the room. There's others that are going to gun for you. And I think iPro has done a wonderful job of leveraging that. I think under your direction, it's certainly going in it's going much further because a lot of times, you get complacent in a company and you can't see the forest for the trees. And the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. I think everybody wants to grow. I think everybody wants to be better. But I don't know that anybody pushes the envelope to be better. You understand what I mean? Completely.
And your definition of insanity was a quote on one of my walls back in the Encore days. And I think all the folks at iPro today, almost all of them, have some law firm or service bureau background. We hired Sadia Guerra from who used to be list support director for Latham. We have all these.
That was Latham and Watkins, right?
Right. So we have all these folks, whether big time law firm like that or these long time service bureau people who understand the workflow, but more importantly, they've walked a mile in those shoes, and so they know the importance of getting it right and reducing the starts and stops and making it to where you're not getting yelled at because something's wrong or you're not getting sued or all that stuff. So that's probably the nice thing about the iPro family is they've been in those shoes and they're trying to solve those business problems that drove them crazy and tormented them over the years. So you were smart, by the way, to staying out because it is I'm only 29 and look how much gray hair I have.
Well, what I did was I took my own advice. I said, I have three things that I'm good at. I can name you 100 other people that are better than me, but I'm good at trial and building a database and understanding getting documents to the screen and doing it. I'm good with video. That's kind of been one of my fortes as well. And I'm good at prep. And those are the things I'm good at. Everything else, I'm mediocre at best, but I know experts. When someone wants to talk to me about how to manage 125 million documents, I'm going to say call Kim Taylor. Don't talk to me. I know how to do it. I understand it. But I know enough to be dangerous. I know that there's better ways out there. We were talking about quotes. You said about the insanity quote. I've got one in my office that I keep on my desk. And it says the following. It's not the will to win that matters. Everyone has that. It's the will to prepare to win that matters. And Coach Bear Bryant, Alabama, said that. And that's one thing that you guys do as well. And we talk about prepare. You guys are involved in the litigation life cycle early. And the earlier you can get involved, the better, right?
Well, and part of our new automated digital discovery is a new application that it's a very complicated name called Media Manager. So, but basically that's what it's doing. And we believe that one of the tough business problems that we had being a service bureau is how do you manage all this influx of data? At Encore, back in 2011, we were processing about 30 terabytes a month. And we had probably 1,500 to 2,000 unique cases going on at one time. And those cases are coming and going, and you have to have all of the chain of custody and security for those drives, but then the data is up on the network, and then when that case is ending and you have to archive it, where's all that data? And it just was a very difficult thing to manage. And so we, in August at ILTA, will be showing our media manager as well that we're going to assist in being that librarian, that chain of custody, and helping them solve the second largest problem. The first largest problem, obviously, is people, which we think we're going to drastically reduce and help. But the second is, what do you do with all that data, and how do you manage it? And that's just our years and years and years of running service bureaus that we said, how do we attack these business problems that will give the most bang for the bucks for either the law firm side or the service bureau side? If you're a law firm, you have the same problem that the service bureaus, but probably less people to help you do it. So this will change drastically. You mentioned Bear Bryant, and one of the things that I'm a big Ohio State Buckeye, and of course I'm excited about my national championship. But
The Ohio State University.
yeah, the Ohio State, and so in both Encore and iPro, you walk into the lobby, and there's a quote from Woody Hayes: "You win with people." And he wrote a book with the same title, and that's really been my my recipe for success in my 23 years is people. And if you can get great people that are passionate, and you can empower them to go take that mountain and win the game, and if you can give them the tools and also hold them accountable, but reward them if they win. The name of the game in this industry is people, and there's not enough great people in the industry. And I love when you start mentioning all the trial folks like Tim Piganelli, who used to work with me at Envision, and Rob and guys like that. Those people have stood the test of time, and people is the number one ingredient to success for this industry here.
You know, there's only, and I'll tell you, Kim, that brings up a great point. And I don't say this to be disparaging or be negative, but if you think about it, I want you to just go back to, let's just pick a number, go back to 99. How many of us are still around?
Right.
That are doing. I mean, you know, I've said the names and I'm going to say them again. Richard Katz, Ted Brooks, Tim Piganelli, Rob Rosenberg, myself maybe, Kim Taylor, all these people that are still in the game after all these years and have weathered the storms that we've went through. It's hard to stay in this business. You have to have a good client base, or you have to be hooked up. And like you just said, it's all about people. It's like myself. You know, I've got a guy that I do a lot of business with in Dallas, Fort Worth, and that's Ross Jones. And Ross knows things that, like, for instance, I say we only because I was the money guy, the point guy. We're doing a network infrastructure in a law firm right now that they're going through a remodel, and they needed a whole revamp of their servers and what they were going to do and how they were going to do it. Well, Ross is a Cisco certified network administrator. I just brought Ross in and said, "Hey, Ross, handle this whole thing." And he takes it and goes with it. You got to have the right people. And Sam Walton, that's what Sam Walton did with Walmart. You know, I lived in Bentonville, Arkansas for a while. My parents still live there. And that's the thing that Sam Walton did with Walmart, is Sam Walton was not the smartest guy in the world, Kim, but he surrounded himself with the smartest people in the world at what they did. And you can't argue with success, right?
Well, I try to have a rule of thumb that I want to be the dumbest guy in the room, not the smartest, right? So if I'm the dumbest guy in the room, then I've accomplished my goal of making sure that I have great people working with me. But I've been lucky. Steve Moore, I hired in 1983 at Taco Bell, if you can believe that. And here it is 33 years later, 10 different companies later, Steve Moore and I are still together. And he's been the best business partner and friend you can have, to the point to where he's committed to win the same way that I am. I hired Mike Schubert, I think, for $11 an hour back I hate to guess how many years, probably 14, 15 years. And now he's our VP of development, been with me, I think, 3 different times. And the guy is probably the foremost expert on e-discovery. And he's outgrown me by 3 times. I mean, he's way more knowledgeable and sophisticated. So when you have folks like that who can stay with you and grow and help you win, like I said, probably the most exciting thing I have with iPro is 40 Encore people, but out of those 40, 14 are Lex Saludio. Lex Saludio has not been in business since '03. So those are folks that been in the business as long as you and me, and they just thrive on wanting to win.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it's hard to find that. I've all of the names that I mentioned earlier, we've all maintained friendships over the years, and have definitely stood the test of time. And I know that you've been around the industry a long time. You know this thing backwards and forwards and how it works and all facets of. And so I'm sure there's nothing that surprises you or otherwise. So the website, iprotech.com, IPROTECH, iprotech.com. You can go there. Website very well developed, and you can go through and see exactly what iPro has to offer. Let me ask you a question, Kim. You've got a lot of people maybe listening to this, and they've never experienced having to deal with a big data set. They've never been faced with a voluminous amount of banker's boxes and documents, or maybe they have and they didn't know what to do. What word of advice would you give? And I'm going to go ahead and call this sage wisdom right up front. What advice would you give to somebody that's jumping into a case and they're staring a lot of documents? What is the advice that you would give somebody for workflow? What do they need to think about on the front end, and what is the best way to maybe get help to deal with some of this? Because I think that's where people go wrong, is not getting the right help.
Well, that's it in a nutshell. And I think every case is different, and whether the document size, or are you doing a second request where you're under the gun on time, or do you have a little bit more time, and really what's the expertise level of the firm that's doing the work. One of the things that probably I think that I've enjoyed about iPro the most is when I was with Lex and Encore, all these great service providers out there in the industry, I was one of their enemies, right? I competed with them each and every day, and I was trying to steal their lunch money, and they were trying to steal mine. But being at iPro, we have 400 service partners that I've got to get to know most of them, and I've been probably to almost all of their offices. So you see this network of service providers out there, and obviously there's some that are not iPro as well. But you see the vast amount across the country, all these people that has this great knowledge, and obviously you have to vet them and make sure that you're getting the best of the best, and as a price or quality, etc. But my advice to all those is don't try to do it yourself. Figure out what expertise you need, and even if you have software in-house today with managed services, all these service providers today will augment your staff and do a lot of things with you instead of just by themselves. So get that advice and get that help, because if anything can go wrong, it will, and not all data processes equally. And I think that's probably the biggest mistake that law firms or corporations think is, it's just data. I just need to do a production. Well, how many documents is that production? It's 2 million. Well, just try copying 10 files, and how long does it take? And then add and make it 10 million and see the time constraints. It's daunting, and getting that communications and setting that expectation up front, I think, is the most important thing.
How you like Phoenix, Kim?
I love it. It's been kind of crazy. The weather January through June 1st, best weather I've ever had, and I've been here on and off since '78. But then June, we automatically just went to 110, 115. I think we had 10 or 12 days over 110.
But it's a dry heat.
Well, so is my oven, but it still cooks the turkey, right? I tell people we have two seasons in Phoenix. We have summer and we have Christmas Day, and so we're actually having a very wet year. So California's in a drought. We're just the opposite. We've had a lot of rain. Matter of fact, it's cloudy and looks like it's going to rain today. But the hard part about Phoenix is, one, it's hot during the day, but most of the people don't realize at night it doesn't get below 90, and at 10, 11 o'clock it's still 103, 104 degrees at 10 o'clock. So I know growing up in Ohio, you still needed a jacket at night. It's just the opposite here. It's hot all day and all night.
Well, my guy I work with that is a document guy, understands document management, Ross Jones. He's been on this on the podcast with us the whole time. He's been sitting mute, and I'm going to let him comment in just a moment, because Ross and I went to Phoenix. We stayed in Chandler. And no, we were in Gilbert. And Ross said, "Hey, do we have a tea time for in the morning?" And I said, "Yeah, we got a tea time." He said, "What time?" I said, "I think we tee off at like 5:30 a.m. And at like 4:45 or 5 o'clock, the sun came up, and Ross was just aggravated because it was early and it was bright. And then by 9 a.m., we were ready to go back inside. It was so hot when we were playing. Ross, you remember that?
Yes, I do. I'm not going back. I'm just saying.
Ross, talk about tell Kim about your binder clips, how those come in handy.
Well, I did about a 2-month trial out in Las Vegas is where I first saw this trick. But now wherever I go, I travel with some large binder clips, and I sure needed them in Phoenix that I can binder clip the curtains together in the hotel to keep from getting blasted by the sunlight early in the morning, because that broad daylight at 4:45 in the morning, that doesn't work for me.
Yeah, I think Phoenix gets the most sun out of any city in the United States, and so there's the easiest job in the world is being a weathercaster for Phoenix, because it's sunny and no clouds and hot. But it's a nice place, and I mentioned Phoenix. One, ASU is the largest college, and we're really trying to take advantage of that. But I think Lex Eludio and Encore, now iPro, and iPro, by the way, 26 years in business.
Yep.
So think about. We mentioned all these people, but think about the technology in 1989. And I've been doing this since 92, and back then it was DOS and trials. You're bringing these boxes that were these computer boxes that were just crazy. But think about having to teach a lawyer what a mouse is and why you would want to use technology and stuff like that. And this company really started on the Keating case, and Jim Keating was a visionary back then, and he still is today. And the 26 years is just amazes me how the industry has evolved. But back to Phoenix, I think all the companies, people don't realize this, but the industry really started in Phoenix and Houston. So Houston had the Exxon Valdez, and it had a big juggernaut company called Knight Rider, which I worked at. And then in Phoenix, you had Indata, you had Envision and iPro. But it really, as Envision and iPro was building most of all the processing software and trial software and review software back then. But Phoenix has the amount of people that's able to work. I mean, that's one of the things I think we have an advantage is we just have a great workforce here. And we were one of the guinea pigs of the industry back in the day.
And that's I think that whole the unemployment rate in Maricopa County is not very high.
That's the hard part is now the secret is out, and the last 5 years there's a lot of the big companies are moving and bringing data centers or software programming facilities here. And that's really why we had to move and get closer to school and upgrade our facility, just because the competition for the people has changed drastically.
Kim, it has been a pleasure to have you on, and I thank you so very much for taking time out of what I know is a very busy schedule, and I would hope that people who see you at, I know you guys are doing Legal Tech West, I know you're doing the ILTA coming up, I'm sure you'll be out at Legal Tech New York, and I'm sure you welcome people to stop by and say hi to you and talk to you about what you guys have going on.
You bet, and I can't say enough that I did not. I don't know how I did not know about your podcast until you reached out to me, but I've since listened to quite a few, and the information, and you're a natural, and you make everybody at ease, but the information and the insight and your delivery and the way you do it, I guarantee you, once this is done and is published, and I did make too much of a fool of myself, iPro will be promoting this quite a bit. I think you're doing a great service here.
Well, I certainly appreciate that, and like I said in one of my podcasts, I get kind of sheepish when I hear stuff like that. Although I'm arrogant, I'm cocky, I'm all those things that maybe are some of the aspects of a great trial tech. Sometimes overbearing, and certainly in my younger years in this industry, I was. As I've gotten older, I've tamed some of that back. But I'm passionate about people knowing things in the industry. I'm passionate about people doing it the right way. I'm passionate about people not hurting and not making our industry look bad, because we spent so many years, like you talked about, in 92, 93, 94, when you guys started. I can't fathom what you guys went through. I know what we were going through in 98, 99. I can't fathom what you guys were going through way back then. And I just, I want the industry to move forward, and I want the industry to continue, and I want people just doing it the right way, or at least reaching out to the people that can help them. And a guy like Kim Taylor is not accessible. He's not approachable. He is approachable, and he is accessible, and you can shoot Kim an email. And although he has president and COO by his name, that doesn't mean that he doesn't put his pants on the same way that you do. And he's been where 90% of the people in this industry are. When you don't know something, he's been there. He's been in the trenches, and he's done it. And that's why having guests like you and guests like Rob and guests like Ted and guys on the show is because you guys have been there, and you know what it's like to fail. You know what it's like to have something go wrong. I bet you could tell war stories for hours of crap that's happened to you over the years.
Yeah, it's interesting. And when I first started at iPro, we really was fighting a stigma that we were old and dilapidated and our best years was behind us, and they just didn't know what I saw here at this company. And so I went on I've been 2.5 years on this crazy road tour that I call my kissing babies and shaking hands tour, and I'm literally on the road probably 3 to 4 times a month, hitting different cities, and my staff is doing the same thing. And just the people that I've met over the time, and just even connecting with a bunch of my old employees has been, because of the sales has dissipated and moved on to different places. Just meeting those people and listening to their stories and how excited they are, one, for the industry and what they're doing, but also probably the nicest thing, and I call it a love mark, right? Apple's a love mark, Harley Davidson's a love mark. And I think in our own little industry, iPro is somewhat of a love mark, just for the fact that most of the people in the industry, when I go talk to them, they say, oh, I started off with iProView, or I started off with doing Build, and Build has saved my life, or I convert. And so they have all these old stories that they talk about it, how they got into the industry, and the first thing that they've ever learned was iPro, because we were around forever. Right?
That was the first thing I learned. I fall right in that category. If you have been in this industry for any length of time, iPro has somehow touched your career. It's been involved.
Right. So it's kind of nice that I've never seen that we've had so many people rooting for us, and when now that I think we're a much better company today than what we were 3 years ago. And we're getting rewarded for that with, DTI just announced that they are going to be using Eclipse D4 same way, Alta, Tuscovia. So these bigger companies, which only used us for processing, is now using us for processing and review. But I can honestly tell you, when I went on this tour, it was very apparent that the folks out there were rooting for us to do a great job and to win, and we worked hard to fulfill that, and it's kind of a neat thing to watch.
Well, Kim, thank you very much for being on the show, and I count it a pleasure to be able to talk to you. And ladies and gentlemen, for my guest, Kim Taylor, and my other buddy, producer, helper on this week's show, Ross Jones, I'm Rob Helt, and we'll see you next week on another edition of the Trial Technology and Litigation Support Podcast.